Do you have a, for example, a study of which is the most who have a content of disinformation and fake news? Which of these, yeah, the websites or applications have the most? Is it Facebook?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. So thank you. Congresswoman, that's a very tough question to answer. Again, I'll just go back to the kind of place where I started with, which is how do you determine what's misinformation, right? That is not an easy question to answer, but what I would say is
We can qualify it as what's reported, right?
yeah. So if
Is it
you
Facebook? Like, can
So-
you give us? Oh,
Yeah. So if you look at the fact checks that are reported, and now, but I just want to be clear, just speaking of Philippines, right? I believe, and I can check this to make sure that it's accurate after the hearing, but I believe that the most fact checks we see in Philippines are on Facebook.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my question is, how do you ensure that there are no disinformation or fake news that are being disseminated in, for example, in the Facebook platform? Previously, my colleague said that she reported the fake news, the AI generated no, content. Um, do you have a mechanism of removing a content if it's a disinformation or fake news motu proprio? For example, if it's not reported,
Sound check. So ito na yung continuation ng pinapanood nating Tricom, Tricom hearing na ginanap nung nakarang araw, which is tinutuligsa nila dito yung kakayahan ni Meta. At sa tingin ko is parang gusto na rin nilang kontrolin yung Facebook natin, yung mga account natin. Talagang pag sinasabi nga nila, pag sinabing laban sa gobyerno, gusto nilang ipatanggal kaagad yun kay Meta. Ayaw nilang may lumabas. Parang gagawin nila is parang sa North Korea na walang lumalabas na details tungkol sa bansa nila.
and it's being generated. So those are two different things, right? One is reported and one is not reported. If there's no report of that, but it's an AI generated and it's a disinformation or fake news kind of news.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Congresswoman. The fact checkers that we work with, the third-party fact checkers, have the ability to, and they do very often, fact check content even if we have not reported it to us. So the answer is yes. And I would say, I just reiterate, from earlier in my presentation, that whether a piece of content is AI generated or not, we would still treat it the same as misinformation.
So there's a form to if there's no report, you can actually flag it as
Mahirapan
a
kayo dito
disinformation or
kakatanong
fake
kay
news,
Meta.
right?
Bahala kayo dyan.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Yes, so let me talk about all the different ways that this can be done, right? First of all, as your colleague showed earlier, a user that's scrolling through Facebook can report something if they believe it's false information, and that would flag it for our systems so that we would have a look at that and potentially pass it on to a third-party fact checker. Also, we ourselves have the ability to look at content that we see going viral, and if we have reason to believe that that would be a potentially harmful piece of misinformation, we can send it to the third-party fact checkers.
Anong ba kaya gusto nitong mga kongresista na to, na gusto nila kapag merong nag-post na against sa kanila is tatanggalin kagad ng Facebook? Napaka-unfair naman, As long as naman na hindi linalabag yung community guidelines ni Meta, walang karapatan na tanggalin yung isang post na yon. Talagang masyado lang silang gusto nilang ma-manipulate yung lahat ng platform, yung lahat ng social media, ng mga media stream. Gusto nila lahat hawakan sa leeg .
So the third-party fact checkers can and very much do fact check misinformation on their own without any prompt from us or anyone else.
Yes,
And I would just like, sorry, and I would also just stress that the government also has its own reporting channels to us. So if we get a report of misinformation from Comelec or DICT or other agencies that are onboarded to our channels, we will also review that and pass it to the third-party fact checkers.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have here an example of the fact check, example of the fact check image. This is from Digsan. If you think this is normal, then you are abnormal. Hashtag quadcom, hashtag Duterte, hashtag NPA, hashtag HOR, hashtag Philippines. And there's an image of the three of us. It is alarming to see our leaders being questioned by NPA affiliates. The House of Representatives tolerates this, and it is very disturbing. So, Mr. Chair, it was fact-checked by Rappler. And the claim was, it's false, no? So, this is an example of how the Meta does it.
Alam nyo, napakahirap nilang umintindi about dito kay Meta, which is yung pinopost natin sa Facebook, sa YouTube or sa TikTok. Hindi alam yan ng creator or ng moderator ng isang application kung yun ba ay totoo, yun ba ay hindi. Ang inaano nila doon, ang tinatanggal nila yung mga lumalabag sa community guidelines, halimbawa yung mga profanity, mga hate speech, yung mga suicidal, yung ganyan tinatanggal yan ng mga application. Pero yung mga ganitong halimbawa, nag-post ako ng isang picture at sinabi kong ito in-pay ito, kahit hindi totoo, hindi naman yun ma-check ni YouTube or ni Facebook or ni TikTok kung totoo ba o hindi labas sila doon, hindi nila alam yun unless na lang merong mag-report ng fake news sa isang picture na sa isang account na yun. Doon pa lang nila mareresolbahan hindi naman nila kagad yun mahanap or makikita or malalaman,
right? I don't know how you fact check, for example, how you take down, or what is your standards on taking down the AI that is not being fact checked by this by verifiles, by
sige, kasalanan niyan, dinala niyo sila yan sa
Rappler, by those
sa
that
quadcom.
you've actually mentioned before.
Mr. Chairman. Congresswoman, in the presentation I gave, I highlighted that we have a three-pronged approach to misinformation. We remove the most harmful misinformation if we believe that it can lead to, and we can independently confirm that it can lead to offline harm and violence in the real world. We will also do that in the case that it violates certain types of elections law. With misinformation that does not meet that threshold, we will use our third-party fact checkers to check if indeed that misinformation is false or partially false or missing context or any of those kind of labels. And if the third-party fact checker does confirm that it's false, then we will reduce the distribution of that content on our platforms, and we will put a label on it so that someone who sees that content understands that they are looking at content that has been determined by a third-party fact checker to be at least false or partially false, or as I said, there's a number of other labels they can apply. I showed an example earlier about what that would look like on our platforms. And so when it comes to AI, I think the important thing to reiterate is, number one, that whether a piece of content is AI generated or not, the misinformation policies still apply.
Yeah.
Right? They apply across the board. So if there is a piece of misinformation that's generated by AI, it's still going to be the same misinformation policies. Now, there is one additional point to make, which I mentioned previously, which is that if it's a paid piece of content, if it's sponsored, if it's an ad, then there are additional checks that we do, and we require that whoever has placed that ad or boosted that content disclose that it is AI generated, right? And then you'll also be able to go into the ad library and see the details, and these are all publicly available, of who placed the ad, how much was spent on it, and so forth. And if these ads are politically, if they're political in nature, if they are about the election, about a campaign, about a political candidate, if they're about social issues, then they have to go through our authorization process for running political and social ads. That adds another layer of authorization and verification, so that means that,
I mean, my question is, how do you control this? Diba? You have the controls, you have the technology. How do you control this kind of I am asking this, Mr. Chair, because we are always the victims of
Nako
red
po.
tagging. And it is a danger to our life, liberty, and property. And we all know that those are actually false contents. But it keeps on proliferating in the internet. Even right now, as we are speaking. So I'm asking
Gusto
the
talaga
Meta,
nilang kontrolin
how do
yung
they
Meta.
do that? Is there, actually, my next question is about how many disinformation have you had
Nako po.
banned or removed, or how do you control this fake news or disinformation? How many are based on complaints? How many are initiated by your platforms, for example? Those are questions that I would like to be, answered.
Mr. Chairman. First of all, Congresswoman, I think the issue of red tagging is one that we take very, very seriously, and I would express my sympathy to anyone who's been the victim of that. That's obviously a very, very, very difficult experience, and one that I would certainly not wish on anyone. I would just like to emphasize that red tagging violates our policies. We view red tagging as a form of coordinating harm on our platform, and that is prohibited. When we're made aware of it, then and we confirm that it's red tagging, then we will remove that content. We've done that in many, many cases for a number of years now. And I would just emphasize again that does violate our policies, and we will remove it when it's reported to us. So I would encourage you or any other victim of red tagging to send a report to us
Ganun na lang
via
talaga yung
CONELEC,
magandang
via
solusyon yun,
DICT, or the
i-report
other
talaga.
channels that we have with the government, and we would review that with the utmost urgency, given the potential for harm. Your second question was about fact-checking, I believe, right? And I would just say that when it comes to fact-checking, there's a publicly available library, and we can share that with the committee of the different types of fact checks that have been placed on our platform. Just recently, I think we've seen a number of different issues that have been covered by our fact checkers in Philippines, and again, I think those are all publicly available, and be happy to share a list with the committee. But anyone can find that also, as they're all online.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, in terms of red tagging, you act through complaints. For example, you mentioned the ICT, you mentioned COMELEC. So if there's no complaint, you don't act on it.
Pwede rin yung tanong niya, no?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Congresswoman, we would act on it if we were, in any case that we're aware of it. If a member of our internal teams finds it, they would act on it even without a report. So I do just want to make that clear. I think that we do very much benefit from the reports we get. I mean, it is hard. I think
naman
one of the
pala.
things that we know about red tagging is that and I kind of mentioned this before, there are different types of content. When we look at violations of our community standards, there's a type of content that very clearly violates, it's not even close, it's a clear violation of our community standards. The really obvious examples are child exploitative imagery, terrorism, graphic violence. I mean, it is much easier to moderate that kind of content. When we get down to the level of speech, and red tagging is one of these issues, it sometimes can be nuanced, right? Now, it doesn't mean we don't take it seriously. We take it very seriously, right?
You have
And so
guidelines on that.
we do absolutely have guidelines on that. We absolutely have guidelines
For
on red
example,
tagging.
Red tagging per se.
Ano daw?
Sorry?
Red tagging. Do you have guidelines for that?
Yes, we have guidelines on red tagging. Rob, do you want to add anything on this point?
Just say in general, red tagging often involves doxing, which puts people at risk. So that would be a red line, for example. But I think, again, to emphasize, as Rafi's made clear, this is often very nuanced. But that's why we have what we call the trusted reporting channel. So when we get information from DICT, from Comelec, from your good office, from law enforcement and others, they're treated with great deference and treated with great priority. But doxing, putting people's lives in danger, that's obviously a red line for us.
Yes. Thank
So, ayun na, no? By the way, hindi yata to sila na-monetize eh. And yun na nga, ito yung continuation ng Tricom hearing na ginanap nakarang araw, ano? And napaka-clear naman ang sinasabi dito ng Meta, ano, na meron silang mga sapat, mga community guidelines na talagang tatapat doon sa mga binabato nilang mga katanungan, which is, ayun nga, yung kay Franz Castro is bakit daw na talk down, na TikTok down yung page niya. And dito naman is yung mga red tagging, yung mga AI generated na mga video, which is totoo naman. Meron silang community guidelines na sinusunod as long as yung isang post na yun is hindi naman nakakaapekto doon sa community guidelines, hindi sila gagawa ng action. Although gumagawa naman sila ng review, nire-review nila yung bawat account, lalo na yung mga bayad, kasi merong mga binuboost na mga posts eh. Bago nila gawin yun is chine-check muna nila kung okay ba, kung hindi ba yung gawa ng AI bago sila gumawa ng action. Napaka-clear naman, napaka-liwanag ng sinasabi nila tungkol doon sa kanilang mga community guidelines. Sadyang mahirap lang yatang intindihin ng mga kongresista natin. At ayun lang, salamat sa panonood.